I always knew my mom had big dreams. When I was little, she'd sit on the porch with a cup of herbal tea and talk about all the things she wanted to do. "One day, I'm going to have my own wellness empire," she'd say, with a faraway look in her eyes. "Yoga, meditation, aromatherapy, I'll change lives." Back then, I'd nod along, too young to understand what it meant, too hopeful to see the warning signs. Fast forward 20 years, and I was still living at home, still hearing about her grand plans. The only difference was that now they came with an edge. "You know," she'd say casually, stirring her green smoothie, "if I had more space, I could really get this yoga studio off the ground." And by space, she meant my bedroom. Living with my mom had always been complicated. She wasn't a bad person, not really. She was just one of those people who floated from dream to dream, never quite landing. When I was younger, it was essential oils. Then it was organic juicing, then holistic healing. Now it was yoga. And unlike the past fads, she was dead set on making this one stick. I didn't mind helping out. I paid rent every month, contributed to groceries, and even set up a website for her when she decided to offer online classes. But there was always this underlying sense that I was more of a burden than a blessing. She'd never say it outright, of course. It was in the way she'd sigh when I came home late from work, or how she'd tell her friends, "Oh, my daughter, she's still here. For now." And I wasn't a mooch, despite what her passive-aggressive comments might suggest. I worked full-time at a marketing agency, juggling freelance gigs on the side to save up for my own place. I wanted out as much as she wanted me gone, but rent prices were brutal, and it just wasn't in the cards yet. Our home wasn't much an old two-story house with creaky floors and questionable plumbing. My room was the only space that felt truly mine. I'd painted it a soft sage green, lined the walls with bookshelves, and added little touches like fairy lights and cozy blankets. It was my sanctuary, my escape from the chaos of Mom's ever-changing passions. Lately, though, I could feel the tension creeping in like an unwelcome guest. Mom had started eyeing my room more often, lingering in the doorway with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she mused one afternoon, "if I moved my yoga mats in here, I could offer private sessions. The natural lighting is just perfect." I laughed it off. "Sure, Mom. Let me just sleep in the garage, right?" She didn't laugh. Instead, she pursed her lips and walked away, muttering something about thinking outside the box. And then came the pamphlets. They started appearing around the house, on the kitchen counter, the coffee table, even tucked under my bedroom door. Brochures for yoga teacher certifications, rental studio spaces, and my personal favorite articles about how young adults should spread their wings and embrace independence. One night, I found her sitting at the dining table, surrounded by notebooks and highlighters. "Mom," I said warily, "what's all this?" She looked up, her eyes bright with excitement. "I'm going all in, honey. I'm turning this place into a full-fledged yoga retreat and, well..." She trailed off, glancing toward the hallway that led to my room. I felt a sinking sensation in my stomach. "And..." She sighed dramatically, as if she were carrying the weight of the world. "And I need more space. You understand, right?" I opened my mouth to argue, to remind her that I paid my fair share and that I deserved a place to live too. But the words stuck in my throat because deep down, I knew where this was heading. Mom had already made up her mind. I should have seen it coming. It happened on a Tuesday evening, just as I was settling in after a long day at work. I had kicked off my shoes, curled up on my bed with my laptop, and was halfway through replying to emails when Mom knocked on my door. The knock wasn't the usual light tap, it was firm, deliberate, a signal. I sighed, saving my work before calling out, "Come in!" Mom stepped inside, arms crossed, a tight smile on her face. "We need to talk," she said, and just like that, I knew whatever was coming wasn't going to be good. She didn't sit down. Instead, she hovered in the middle of my room, eyes scanning the space as if she was already mentally rearranging it. "So I've made a decision," she began, and my stomach twisted. I'm going to move forward with my yoga studio. The whole thing. Private sessions, workshops, the works. I nodded slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. That's great, Mom. I know how much this means to you. She beamed like she thought I was on her side. Yes, and to really make it happen, I need to clear out some space. You know how cramped the living room is, and I need a dedicated area. I could see where this was going. Mom! She held up a hand. I need your room. There it was. No preamble, no sugarcoating, just blunt and final, like she had been rehearsing it for days. I blinked, letting her words sink in. You need my room? She nodded, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. It's the only room that has enough space and the right energy. The natural light in here is perfect. She walked over to the window, brushing her hand along the curtains like she was already picturing rows of yoga mats. Imagine it candles, soft music, clients finding their inner peace. I stared at her, trying to find the right words. And where exactly am I supposed to go? She sighed, exasperated. Well, you've been talking about moving out for ages anyway, haven't you? Maybe now's the right time to take that step. I felt a sharp pang of betrayal, but I swallowed it down. Mom, I'm not ready yet. You know I'm saving up, but rent is expensive. I pay to live here. I help with groceries and bills. Her face softened for a split second, but then she shrugged. Honey, I know, but this is important to me. It's my dream. You wouldn't want to stand in the way of that, would you? That hit hard. She was doing what she always did, framing it like I was the selfish one if I didn't comply. So what? You're just kicking me out? Mom rolled her eyes. I'm not kicking you out. I'm just encouraging you to move forward with your life. Think of it as a push. I clenched my jaw, feeling the burn of frustration creep up my spine. You're unbelievable, I muttered, standing up and pacing. I can't believe you're choosing yoga mats over your own daughter. That's not fair, she snapped. I've supported you long enough, and it's time you stand on your own 2 feet. I wanted to argue more, to tell her how unfair this was, but deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. Mom had always been like this, chasing the next big thing, no matter who she had to step over to get there. Tears stung the back of my eyes, but I held them in. Fine, I said, voice tight. I'll find somewhere else. She smiled like I had just agreed to help her rearrange the furniture. Good! I'll give you a couple of weeks to figure it out. And with that, she left, humming to herself as if she hadn't just turned my world upside down. I stood there, staring at my neatly arranged room, the books, the little decorations, the cozy blankets I had carefully chosen, and it hit me. I wasn't just losing a room, I was losing my home. Moving out wasn't easy. In fact, it was downright brutal. I spent the next 2 weeks frantically searching for a place I could afford, juggling work, packing my belongings, and processing the gut-wrenching reality that my own mother was shoving me out to make room for a fantasy she was convinced would change her life. I managed to find a small studio apartment about 30 minutes away from my old home. It wasn't much, just a single room with peeling wallpaper and a kitchen that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 80s. But it was mine. I barely had enough saved for the deposit and first month's rent. And after that, well, let's just say my financial situation was less than ideal. Mom didn't seem too concerned as I packed my things. In fact, she was in full-blown studio transformation mode. The moment I emptied a drawer or cleared a shelf, she'd swoop in behind me, measuring spaces and sketching layouts in her notebook. Oh, good! You're taking that desk. I was thinking of putting a little altar there for meditation, she mused, completely ignoring the fact that I was boxing up my entire life. I should have been angry, furious even, but I was too exhausted to fight. So I moved. And as I stood in my tiny new apartment, surrounded by stacks of boxes and an air mattress that would have to serve as my bed for the foreseeable future, I tried to convince myself that this was for the best. At first, things were manageable. Sure, my new place was a little depressing and money was tight, but I was free. No more passive-aggressive comments about my lack of independence. No more living under the weight of her ever-changing whims. Then the calls started. "Sweetie," Mom's voice cooed over the phone one evening, "I was just wondering if you could help me out with a little thing. Just to support the business." Here we go. "What do you need, Mom?" I asked, already bracing myself. "Well," she said in a tone dripping with forced cheer, "the new yoga mats I ordered are really high quality, but they were a little pricier than expected. And with rent and utilities, you know how it is. Could you spot me a little? Just until things pick up?" I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Mom, I just moved out. I'm barely making rent myself." There was a pause, and then the sigh came. "I mean, I did let you stay at home for so long, rent-free. It's not too much to ask for a little help now, is it?" I gritted my teeth. "I paid rent, Mom. I always did." "Oh, sweetheart, let's not argue over the details. I just thought, as my daughter, you'd want to see me succeed." I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, "I'll see what I can do," which in mom speak meant no. And it didn't stop there. A week later, she called again. "Hey, so the turnout for my first class wasn't as big as I thought it would be. People said they love the space, though. I just need to do a little more marketing." "Mom, nothing major, just a couple of social media ads. I was thinking you could cover it for now, and once clients start rolling in, I'll pay you back." I knew better. My mother had a long history of paying back that never actually materialized. I declined again, offering my usual excuse about my own financial struggles. Then came the guilt trip. "I did all of this for us," she huffed during one of our tense phone calls. "I thought you'd be proud of me. I thought you'd support me." I rubbed my temples, the familiar feeling of frustration bubbling to the surface. "Mom, I support you, but I can't be your personal bank." And just like that, the mood flipped. "Fine," she snapped. "I guess I'll figure it out on my own like I always do." For a moment, I felt guilty. But then I remembered the way she had so easily pushed me out, how she had been more excited about rolling out yoga mats than helping me find a place to live. The guilt vanished. Over the next month, the reality of her business started to sink in. The grand opening event, which she had hyped up to everyone she knew, ended up being a total flop. A few of her friends showed up out of obligation, but paying clients? Nowhere to be found. I watched from a safe distance as her social media posts became increasingly desperate discounts, special deals, even a bring a friend for free promotion that screamed desperation. Then, one night, my phone rang. "Hi, Mom." There was a long pause, and then she blurted out, "I need help with rent." I closed my eyes. Here it was. "I thought the yoga studio was taking off." She let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, well, turns out people aren't exactly lining up to do downward dog in my living room." I bit my tongue to keep from saying "I told you so." Instead, I asked, "How much do you need?" "Just a little," she said quickly. 500? Maybe 7? Just until I get a few more clients." I almost laughed. "Mom, I don't have that kind of money." "Oh, come on," she pleaded. "I'm your mother. If I had the money, I'd help you." I finally snapped. "No, you wouldn't, Mom. You literally kicked me out to chase a business you didn't even plan properly, and now you expect me to bail you out?" She gasped, as if I had just committed the ultimate betrayal. "I can't believe you'd say that to me, after everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done to me, you mean?" I shot back. "You made it clear I wasn't your priority, so now you're not mine." There was a long silence, and then she muttered, "I can't believe my own daughter would turn her back on me like this." I hung up without another word. It wasn't easy ignoring her after that. She sent me texts, guilt-tripping me, claiming she was on the verge of losing everything. Some of my relatives even reached out, asking why I was being so harsh with my own mother. But I held my ground. I had worked too hard to build my own life, and I wasn't about to throw it all away to bail her out of a mess she created. And then, one day, I got a message from an old neighbor. "Hey, Just saw your mom putting up a for rent sign in front of the house. Thought you should know. I stared at my phone, heart pounding. Mom was renting out the house? She hadn't mentioned that. Maybe she finally realized she couldn't afford to keep it up. Maybe she was finally facing reality. But deep down, I knew better. A week after I got the message about the for rent sign, curiosity got the better of me. I drove by the old house after work, heart pounding in my chest. Sure enough, there it was, bold, red letters screaming, for rent, right in the front yard. I slowed down, staring at the sight of my childhood home, now reduced to a business venture gone wrong. Mom was outside, standing with a forced smile plastered across her face, while she spoke to a couple who looked about as interested in renting as they were in watching paint dry. She was in full sales mode, gesturing wildly and talking about the perfect space for a wellness retreat. I almost drove off. Almost. But something inside me, maybe lingering anger, maybe just exhaustion, made me pull into the driveway. Mom's face fell the second she saw me step out of the car. "Oh, look who's here," she said, plastering on that fake cheer. "I was just about to call you." The couple exchanged awkward glances, clearly sensing the tension. I didn't even bother with pleasantries. "Can we talk?" I asked, crossing my arms. Mom huffed, giving the couple an apologetic smile. "Let me just handle this little thing with my daughter." "Feel free to look around." She practically dragged me inside by the arm, her grip tight. As soon as the front door closed, she dropped the act. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, her eyes darting toward the window. I glanced around the house, my chest tightening. The place barely resembled my home anymore. My old room, once filled with my books and little comforts, was now an empty shell with a cheap yoga mat in the middle of the floor. "I should be asking you that," I shot back. "Why is there a for rent sign outside?" Mom rolled her eyes and flopped onto the couch, her face contorting into a pout I knew all too well. "What do you think, sweetheart? The studio didn't exactly take off like I expected, and bills don't pay themselves." I shook my head, letting out a dry laugh. "So let me get this straight first. You kicked me out to chase your yoga studio dream, and now you're losing the house? And you want me to bail you out?" Her expression hardened. "I wouldn't be in this mess if you had just helped me when I asked. I was trying to build something for us, but no, you couldn't even spare a little money to support your mother." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Mom, I did support you. For years. I paid rent, I helped with groceries, I even built your website. But instead of appreciating it, you threw me out like I was nothing." She looked away, guilt flickering across her face before she replaced it with defiance. "I thought you'd understand. You're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. I needed this." I stared at her, feeling the weight of every sacrifice I'd made for her over the years. The late nights working extra shifts to help with bills, the times I passed up social opportunities because she needed my help at home, the countless emotional manipulations disguised as motherly love. And then it hit me. She wasn't going to change. She was never going to take responsibility for her actions. "I understand perfectly," I said, my voice steady. "You're always going to put yourself first, and I can't keep cleaning up after your messes." Mom's eyes widened. "I'm your mother," she snapped, her voice trembling with desperation. "You owe me." I shook my head. "No, I don't." Her mouth fell open in shock. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to find the right words to guilt me back into submission, but I didn't give her the chance. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. "Here," I said, dropping it onto the coffee table. She eyed it suspiciously. "What's this?" "It's a buyout offer," I said simply. "I spoke to a real estate agent. Turns out the house is still in your name, but with the right connections, you can sell it and walk away with enough to cover your debt and maybe even start over somewhere else." Her face paled. "You want me to sell the house?" "I don't want you to do anything, Mom. I'm just giving you an option, one that doesn't involve dragging me down with you." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I stood my ground. For the first time in my life, I wasn't falling for the emotional theatrics. She flipped through the papers with trembling hands. "But where would I go?" I shrugged. "That's up to you." Silence stretched between us. Finally, she let out a shuddering breath. "You'd really just let me lose everything?" I looked her dead in the eyes. "I lost everything when you kicked me out, Mom. Now it's your turn to figure things out." With that, I turned on my heel and walked out, leaving her sitting there with the buyout offer clutched in her hands. As I stepped back into my car, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: relief. Driving away, I realized that for the first time, I wasn't carrying the weight of her dreams on my shoulders, and it felt damn good. In the weeks that followed, Mom's calls slowed to a trickle. She didn't bombard me with guilt trips or desperate pleas for money anymore. Instead, she went radio silent, and honestly, it was a relief. I had spent so much of my life entangled in her chaos that finally having the space to really breathe felt surreal. I threw myself into work, picked up a couple of new freelance gigs, and even started decorating my tiny apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No one would walk in and claim it for their next big dream. No one would tell me to leave. Then, one evening, as I was folding laundry, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. "I sold the house, moving to a smaller place. Thought you'd want to know." I stared at the message for a long moment, unsure of what to feel. Relief? Sadness? Satisfaction? Maybe all of the above. I took a deep breath and typed back, "I'm glad. I hope it works out for you." Her response came almost instantly. "I still can't believe you wouldn't help me." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. Some things never change, but instead of engaging, I just let it be. I wasn't going to let her pull me back into that toxic cycle. I'd made it out, and I intended to stay out. Over the next few months, I heard bits and pieces from mutual acquaintances. Mom had moved into a modest one-bedroom apartment across town and had scaled down her business to offering online yoga classes. I'd seen her posts on social media filtered selfies with captions about embracing life's changes and finding balance through tough times. It was almost comical how she could spin anything into an inspirational quote. At first, I half expected her to show up at my door, full of apologies or demands, but she didn't, and honestly, that was fine by me. I had spent so much of my life trying to win her approval, to prove my worth to her. Letting go of that was liberating. With my newfound independence, I started making plans for my own future. I saved diligently, started working toward buying my own place someday, and even allowed myself to have a little fun. I took weekend trips, reconnected with old friends, and signed up for a dance class, something I never would have done living under her roof. One day, while grabbing coffee with a friend, she mentioned seeing Mom at a local farmer's market. "She looked different," my friend said hesitantly, "like she's really trying to get her life together." I sipped my latte, considering that maybe she was. Maybe losing the house had been the wake-up call she needed. But whether she changed or not didn't really matter to me anymore. I had finally realized that I didn't have to carry her burdens to be a good daughter. One evening, as I settled into my couch with a book, I got another text from Mom. "Hope you're doing well. I miss you." I stared at the words for a long moment, feeling the familiar tug in my chest. Old me would have jumped at the chance to mend things, to go running back and try to fix everything. But new me knew better. I typed back, "I'm doing great. Hope you are too." And that was enough. As I set my phone down and curled up with my book, I smiled to myself. I wasn't bitter anymore. I wasn't angry. I was just free. And that, more than anything, felt like the perfect ending to a chapter I had been stuck in for far too long.